Hi, welcome everybody. It's Chris Petri. Welcome back. We're having some fun here in the studio. We're actually going to work with some really cool ideas. I think you're really going to enjoy this. This is like a lot of fun for me. I love painting flowers, and we're going to incorporate the idea of limited palette with painting flowers. So essentially what we're going to do is work with a limited palette. So we're not going to break out as many colors as maybe we could, or it depends actually on what type of flowers you're painting, let's say. So you can paint a bouquet of flowers, let's say, on a table in a vase, and have a few items like a cup and a couple pieces of fruit and different things, and you can enhance the colors of your watercolors paintings if you're doing still life and painting flowers. You can keep it more simple by maybe just having a small vase with just a few flowers in it, and maybe just some simple background, and maybe just one or two items on the table. Or you can make it a more crowded looking, or let's say a more busy looking painting if you add more subject matter to your watercolor design of your painting. So adding in more features or more subject matter. So here we're gonna paint this vase of flowers, and we're gonna stick with a somewhat limited palette. So when I say limited palette, I'm just pretty much meaning we're gonna limit the amount of colors we're gonna use. We're not gonna use the full array of colors. We're gonna kind of choose some of the colors in this palette to keep things more simplified. And as well, a limited palette sometimes makes a painting look really kind of low-key. So if you wanted to, let's say, make a more subdued or low-key painting, you can kind of use a limited palette, not so many colors, maybe stick to maybe 3 or 4 colors. That might be your favorites that you like to use. Or a lot of times the scene itself will kind of give you the color design that you're going to need to use if you're going to paint it more realistically, let's say. But you could change things around and make things different colors, make it a predominantly warmer painting or a predominantly cooler painting by changing color schemes in your paintings. But not to get off track too much here, let's stick again with the idea of a limited palette with less colors, and just paint a vase of flowers and see how we can do that and make it look like a really beautiful painting. And we're not going to use an incredible amount of subject matter. We're just going to really have a vase and flowers, and then we're going to have a background of a window in the background with a table, and that's about it. So a table, a window, a little bit of the wall showing here on the side to kind of frame out the painting, and then the flowers, and we're going to keep it very simple. All right, so let's get into it. Let's do it. So this is a small composition I did a few weeks ago for actually a birthday card. I'm going to take this, set it across for me, and we'll use that for our to work from. So we'll do first a preliminary sketch, which is a really super light sketch to kind of lay out where everything's going to go on our rectangle that we're working in. So here I'm going to have my wall over here. So this would be the wall next to the window. And then we're going to have the table here. This is going to kind of come up. So this is just a light preliminary sketch, just so I kind of get the idea of where everything is going to be. And we're going to go across like this. The vase is here. And there's the table back here. And that's what's great about a preliminary sketch. You know, you can change things around a little bit, or if you think you want to, if you see something that might not be correct in your scale when you're okay, now just doing the preliminary, just to get things laid out correctly here. And I'll just try to get a light pattern here. Now you'll hear me say this a lot of times. Sometimes when you do this super light preliminary sketch, sometimes you might say to yourself, you might think to yourself, okay, I did this preliminary sketch. This is maybe all I need to actually do for this. Or you might want to go over this a second time and draw it or draw over the top of it to get more detail. Depends on what your subject matter is. But here on this painting, I think I am going to go over with another, we'll do the actual contour drawing now. So I have everything. I'm happy with the layout of the very light preliminary sketch. It looks good. Now I can go in and I'll do my contour drawing. So I'll start with my vase. And this is okay. I'm just doing the contour drawing, so I keep looking back and forth. I keep an eye on my pencil, what my pencil's doing on the paper, and I'm just going constantly back and forth, looking at the picture, continuing with my drawing, looking back at the picture where I'm working from, looking at my pencil, where my pencil's going. If I have to stop and kind of wait a second and kind of figure out when I'm like where the next angle or shape is going to go, I can stop and just hang out there for a second and then go and continue on. Okay, let me continue here. So I'm not talking much. Contour drawing takes a lot of concentration. So that's why I sort of try to keep in mind what I'm doing here. So I'm just going along here, trying to keep a focus. Shadow there. Okay, now there's a window behind us here. It'd be nice to carry that line with the window up there, like that. Okay, this is the window panes in the back. And I'm just going with like a loose type of grid pattern. I'm not getting really like breaking out a ruler or anything, although you could use a ruler. You could use a ruler to lay out your walls and your your window panes, although I think it looks better just doing it by hand and not really fussing too much with the accuracy of it. And I think this is good. So we did our preliminary sketch. We just did our contour drawing where we got our details in here. And that's plenty good. Now let's get into the painting portion. We're going to start the painting portion, and then we'll probably do a part 2 to finish up, because it's going to take a bit of time to paint this. And we'll sort of like talk about laying out the colors for this, for a limited palette. So when I say limited palette, definitely doesn't mean you have to be like, you know, just taking 3 colors and saying that's all I'm going to use is 3 colors. You could do that. But for me, when I say limited palette, I mean you're sort of playing down using a lot of colors and you're trying to use less colors. So if you keep it just with the idea of let's use less colors than we normally do, then we're kind of like, we'll have a better feel for a limited palette. So, but you could structure it and just tell yourself I'm only using 3 colors and that's it, fine. Or you could just say I'm going to limit the colors I'm going to use than what I normally do. So I'm going to go with that idea. Now when I do that, let's say we go with a gold warm color. We can say let's use some yellow ochre. We could use raw sienna, which is very, very close to yellow ochre in color. It's a little more transparent than yellow ochre. We could also mix in some burnt umber, and maybe even some burnt sienna. So we could kind of think of that as like one color. So we're just giving ourselves variation, but it's sort of a warm golden red kind of color. And we could use this more sparingly, the burnt sienna, and stick more to the yellow ochre and raw sienna. But we could consider that like one color almost. That's how I would look at it. Then greens. So here let's use some sap green, some olive green, some viridian, and again I'll use viridian more sparingly, and the olive green and sap green I'll use more of those. But basically these are just the greens, so this would be basically one color, just slight variations in that color of green. So that would be our second color. And then our third color, let's go with a purplish blue. So purplish blue can be cerulean. So let's take some cerulean, cobalt, and here's where you have some fun. If you're using a blue, which would be like one color, let's say a blue, you have 3 varieties right there. You have your cobalt. That's if you're using my palette. If you're new to my channel or you're new to my videos, you just type in into YouTube my palette, Chris Petri. You'll see all the colors I use on my palette, which would be all of these here, maybe a few extras. This is more of a smaller palette I use. I usually use a larger palette, but this one is kind of works really good too. Has mostly everything I use on a normal basis. So here we go: cerulean blue, cobalt blue, French ultramarine blue, and then let's add in a little bit of mineral violet, purplish color, and then also some alizarin crimson. Now this we're going to use very sparingly: the alizarin crimson and mineral violet, which is a purple color, for our flowers, and the blues. So the blues and the purplish and red, we'll use that more sparingly. And then also we can use a cadmium yellow and a cadmium lemon. So I'm not trying to be complicated about this, but I just want to be kind of like, I want to explain this, I guess, in the best way that I can. We're sort of using like 3 colors. for the most part. We're using the blues, the yellowish gold, and the greens. So that's our main like simplified palette, our limited palette. And within that limited palette, we are going to just go a little bit off of the game plan of a limited palette with just a touch of the mineral violet and the alizarin crimson, as well as maybe a little bit of the viridian green. But for the most part, if we think of it this way, we have the top portion. So the top portion is basically our limited palette: blue, yellowish gold, and green. That's the main limited palette we'll use for this. And then we'll add the viridian green and the mineral violet and alizarin crimson, just for little touches of a little added color. But this will be the main colors here: green, gold, and blue. So we're going to stick with that game plan, and our result is going to be this. We're going to paint this scene, this still life, and that will be the look we're going to go for, which is a limited palette look, more relaxing, calming kind of looking painting, not too bright and too high key, more low key or middle key, probably middle key, we'd consider that. And let's go for it. Let's get started. And we'll go in with some greens. I'm going to pretend that the light is in the background coming through the window, as well as maybe from the right side too as well. So we can always add a little insignia on our watercolor paper. So the light's coming from the right, and then we'll just make a note, backlight. And that'll give us if we need to just reference in our mind while we're painting, if we get caught up in the moment, we're having so much fun painting, we can just realize, all right, let's look at our notes quick. Okay, there we go, we got it. Light from the right, backlight from the back, from that back window. And a little bit of splashing. What I like to do sometimes is kind of get some of the definite colors, like the green, like we're working on the green color now. We're definitely sap green and olive green. And we can kind of carve out some shapes of flowers here. And again, here we're negative shape painting. And that is basically just the idea of painting around something, painting around the subject, and then this subject then appears. So if we're painting around the flower, eventually we'll see the flower appear. And all right, so I'm getting this larger flower sort of worked out here with the negative shape painting. Then we'll go in for some cerulean blue, some mineral violet, and for our flower color. I'm going to get some of that cadmium yellow and cadmium lemon yellow. All right, we've made a start of our painting. We're doing our darks first, our darker tonal values first with some greens to carve out some of our flower shapes. Again, negative shape painting. We have already our colors laid out here, so if you lay out your colors first in your palette, if you're going to work like the same way we're doing here, if you're following this type of formula for your paintings, you're basically going to, ahead of time, pick out your colors, a limited palette basically, green, gold, and blue. And once you have your paint in your palette, you're set. You know what you're going to use, your colors. You can see them right out there, and you'll memorize your palette after a while, so you really don't even think about it too much. But in the beginning, it takes a little bit of time. You memorize all your colors. If you stick with the same palette, I definitely, that's one thing you'll hear me say a lot in my videos. Try to stick with the same palette of maybe, maybe 10, 15 colors, and just use them all the time, and then you'll memorize the names of them. You'll memorize how they look. It'll be committed to memory, and then also when you look outside, you'll be able to kind of pick out the colors, and you'll see things and go, oh yeah, that bush looks like viridian green, or olive green, or wow, that sky looks like cerulean blue, or oh, that sky today looks like cobalt blue. It's a little darker. So you'll get used to your colors. You'll see them out in real life when you look around. All that is good. Or in photos, you're looking at photographs and you say, oh wow, yeah, in that photograph I can see that's a French ultramarine blue and a cobalt blue, and that's definitely a cadmium yellow there. So you'll memorize all your colors as you go, but not to stress over it. You'll know you'll memorize them eventually as you go, and work with watercolors, your paint colors. So in any case, let's have a little break. We'll come back. We'll do a part 2, and we'll finish up our painting. And we'll get everything all looking fantastic, and we'll have a finished, beautiful painting. We'll take off the tape for a nice little border, and this could be a gift card or just a nice little painting for yourself, for your home. And we will see you in just a few minutes.